Really lovely to be here, and the reason why I'm here is because the Crafty Kit Company has collaborated with Scottish Women's Institute, and we're absolutely delighted to be able to do this. You know, we're all about spreading the joy of crafting to as many people as possible, and one of the ways that we do that is by building a community, and we have a lovely community on Facebook. But I really love interacting with our customers and customers to be, perhaps, on things like workshops and so on. So a little bit about the Crafty Kit Company before I show you the project that I'm going to be demonstrating tonight. And then, as Diane said, we'll have some questions and answers. If you have any questions at the end, I'm very happy to chat. So some of you might know that I'm the daughter of Ken Lochhead, who was quite a well-known Scottish watercolour artist. Dad died in 2006, and my mum, who lives in East Linton, is still running his business. So she's 87 this year, and she is still running the business. And really, I think I can, credit my dad with my artistic background and love of all things crafting, and my mum as well. I had recently picked up again, and it's been such a joy incorporating to the projects in this book. So yeah, Crafty Kit Company, we've been going for over 10 years. We've done all sorts of crafts: knitting, crochet, sewing, needle felting, beading, all sorts. And as Diane mentioned, I have just had a book published. It's not quite available, but it will be. And if I show you what it looks like, this book incorporates lots of different techniques, including watercolour and a bit of needle felting and a little bit of embroidery. And there's also some, I think, there's some beads in there as well, the optional to put some beads in. And there's incorporating things like little feathers and twigs. And it's needle felting art, woodland scenes. And it's one of the projects from this book that I would like to show you tonight. Now, this is the first and only copy of it, and I've got it in my hands, but it is available for pre-order on Amazon or through the Search Press website. So I'm going to show you the project. You get the right page, and then I'll show you. So the project is the pine forest. And the book actually will take you, if you're interested in actually creating this from scratch yourself, it takes you through step by step with photos of each step and instructions, all the materials, the techniques, so that you can create your own. But of course, every project will be slightly different, and that's the lovely thing about crafting, isn't it? Nobody makes the same thing twice, and no two people make exactly the same thing. So this is my version of it. And it's done on just a plain sort of canvas material. You can use any kind of fabric, a sort of thicker fabric. And if I show you the side, I've actually mounted it onto one of these block canvases, which I just got in Hobbycraft. So that's what we're doing. You can see it is a combination of watercolor, so a bit of needle felting in the trunks of the trees, and the branches are embroidered. So it's very easy. It's much easier than it looks, actually, and it's a very effective technique. So what we're going to do, and I wasn't expecting anybody to actually be making along with me tonight, but it's more about me showing you the techniques and also the inspiration behind it. So I'm going to move this camera over, and just bear with me while I make sure it's at the right angle. So I'll just switch this over now. And you should be able to see my hands. Now, the pictures are quite good at the moment. So if you just give me a little thumbs up, anybody, if you can see my hands. Yeah, excellent, good. And I've also got this light up here, which I'll just point down. And that will just give us a little bit more light. Okay, I think that's quite good. So last week I was on a little break with my husband and our 15-year-old. We go to the Isle of Lismore most years. So Lismore is a tiny island off the west coast of Scotland, and we've been going for about 40 years. And we
You want
decided this year that we
more
would have a
screen?
couple of um,
It's usually the
and
best. Keeps it
um,
automatic screen.
oh, if you don't mind, if you just wouldn't mind muting yourself if you're not already muted, that would be brilliant. Thank you. So yeah, we go to Lismore every year, and this year we decided we'd go a wee bit further north as well, and we went up to Arisaig. Beautiful part of the world. I'm sure some of you know it. We had a couple of nights in a glamping pod, and on the way back down, I took these pictures from the driver's seat. No, not the driver's seat, from the passenger seat, definitely not from the driver's seat. So I did ask Andy to slow down a little bit. I need to take some pictures of these scenes because they're very kind of similar to what we're trying to recreate with the watercolor. So just a couple of different scenes taken from the car window as we were driving back from Arisaig. And these trees, now there's a thing about these trees. This one's got a bit missing actually, and it is literally how it looked. In my mind, if I just bring this up to the camera a little bit, see if you can, yeah. You know when you're little and you draw a Christmas tree and you've got the trunk down the middle and then the branches come down on each side. Well, there are trees that look like that, but actually the more I started to really study these trees, the branches don't come down the way, they actually go up the way. And it kind of surprised me that I'd lived almost 60 years of my life and had never realized that. And I've been drawing trees wrong. But I suppose a Christmas tree wouldn't really work if you drew it with the branches coming down the way because the baubles would all fall off the ends, you know, in a drawing, as it were. So when we do the watercolor, we're actually putting the branches going up the way rather than down the way. And I tell you, the first one I did, the branches all came down the way and it just didn't look right. And that's the reason why. So that's the real life inspiration behind this. Now, if you're going to have a go at this project, there's quite a lot of bits and pieces that you need. Now you'll see that I'm working on a tea towel. And the reason for that is if you're on a hard surface underneath, you'll just get a lot of water all over your table because you're going to make the cloth quite damp. So I've just got a tea towel. You could use a towel or anything absorbent. Of course, you need your fabric that you're actually going to be working on. And this is just a kind of a thick canvasy cotton. I've got my paints here. And these are quite nice watercolor paints. They're Winsor & Newton, but honestly, it doesn't matter. You don't need to have fancy paints for this. Even children's paints or acrylic paints would do, but you definitely want paints that have got a nice strong pigment because the color tends to dry quite a lot lighter than it, you know, when you first put it on. So that's my paint palette. I've got, this is essential, a water spray. So I just bought this empty one, but you know, you could, I want a cleaning spray, an empty bottle, and just put some water in it. So a water spray. I always have some kitchen paper. We seem to have run out. So I've got a little bit of toilet roll. So this is just for testing the colours. And also once you've sprayed your water on it, if it's a bit too wet, then you can use some toilet paper or kitchen paper just to mop up a little bit, take the excess off. I've got a range of brushes. And I really like these ones that are quite wide, but also thin, if that makes sense. So these are really good for just dabbing colour on. And I've got my water, obviously, for rinsing my brushes. And then I'll show you when we come to do the needle felting, the bits and pieces that we need for needle felting. But for now, this is all we need to get started. And I've got something secret underneath here that I'm just going to take out and put to one side. It's a kind of like a Blue Peter thing that we need to do because of the everything being quite damp. and we don't have time in a workshop to let everything dry, so I had to prepare something a bit earlier. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by making the piece of fabric quite damp with the water spray. And you're literally going to just spray all over. And then it's a wee bit wet looking. You can just take some of your kitchen paper. Just give it a little dab. I think that's okay. So the wetter your fabric, the more your paint is going to spread out as soon as you put it on. And there's something about this project that it's really good, I think, if you are a recovering perfectionist, because it's really going to force you just to let go and relax. Because once the paint is on the fabric, there's not very much that you can do to control it. It's just going to kind of do its own thing, and that's really lovely, actually. But if you are a perfectionist and you want everything perfect and in the right place, that's not going to happen. So just a heads up for you. And that's why everybody's outcomes are different. So having sprayed the fabric, what we're going to do is we're going to just go ahead and apply the paint straight onto the fabric. Now, I've got here in this palette, I'll just show you. Where's the camera? There we go. On the end here, this end. So there's there's 3 greens all next to each other. It's just how they came. I didn't put them in there. There's 3 greens next to each other. There's some really dark blues up in the other corner up here. And there's some kind of dark colors down here. I'm not even very sure. It's like I think this is a Payne's grey. It's like a really dark blue. And there's something else in there, even darker. So if you use watercolor at all, you'll be familiar with these colors. I'm not very good at knowing the names of them, and I just kind of go for the colors that I think I like the look of. And the thing is with these pine forests is that they're all different colors. They're all different shades of light and dark green. So you can mix and you can just have fun with it is what I would say. So I'm going straight in to the paint palette, and I'm going to apply the paint directly from the palette. So I'm not mixing a pool of paint with water. I'm just taking it directly from the palette. And I'm going to start about halfway down, and I'm going to just do some long strokes backwards and forwards. And you can see the paint just beginning to spread out. I think I might try and move this down without breaking anything. Let's see. Then a little bit of a better view. Let's move it along this way a little bit. There we are. Now, if you feel like you've not quite got enough water on there, you've got your spray handy and you can just spray a little bit more on. I'm going to add in some more, a different color of green. So that's more of a kind of a yellowy green there. Notice this paint I'm applying across the width of the fabric. And I'm going to add in a little bit of this darker grey or the dark blue and a little bit of brown. A little touch more. Now, what I should have said before I started is if you know how you're going to be finishing off your work, if you're going to be putting it onto a block canvas, for example, you can always mark out the outer extent that you want your paint to go to. Or you might want to just put it into a traditional frame afterwards. But if you've got some idea of the size, then that's always good to know. But you probably want to practice a few times anyway. So this is our kind of foreground, and then we're going to do some trees. We're going to create the kind of the background of the trees. So the trees are made in 2 different stages. They're painted in 2 different stages. So I'm just going to add a little bit more water to the upper half. And I'm going to go in with the same kind of mixtures of green. And I'm going to take my brush from the bottom and just do some strokes up the way like this. Try and get them more or less in a straight line. And then I'm going to go in with a different colour, maybe just add some of the darker. And maybe just some of this lighter as well. And I know it doesn't look like much at the moment, but if you were to kind of look from a distance, you can see it beginning to come together. And what will happen is the paint will just spread out gradually and it will begin to merge. So ideally, you want the background to be quite full. If you've got some little gaps there, you can just add a little bit of paint in. And I think it's kind of pleasing to have some of the taller trees in the middle and some of the shorter ones at the edges. But of course, you could do this any way you like, because if you have a look at the scenes from the roadside, if you wanted to add a mountain or a hill in the background and some sky in there as well, then, you know, this is going off at a completely different angle. So that's up to you. So this is the first step. Okay, now then what you would need to do with this, because it's quite wet, you want to take this and put it somewhere flat to dry. Don't do what I did. So here's my absolutely #1 top tip. Don't put it on a radiator. Don't try and dry it with a hairdryer. So the one time that I was in a little bit of a rush, I was at work and I needed to complete the project. I put it over the radiator and I went away and I had my lunch and I came back and the colours had disappeared. So something in the heat of the radiator had not reacted well with the paint and it had just drawn all of the colour out. So don't do that. Leave it to dry naturally. And I will put this to one side. And then you want to come back to it. So here's one I prepared earlier. You can see it looks slightly different. You want to come back to it while it's still slightly damp. So you don't want it to be completely bone dry. It needs to be slightly damp, which this is, but it's maybe just not quite damp enough for what I want to show you next. So I'm just going to a very light touch with some water over the top. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add in a little bit more detail for the trees in the foreground. So we've got our background, but we want to add a little bit more detail in. And you're going to do this again with a nice thin brush. So ideally one of these kind of wider brushes, but if I turn it on its end, you can see it's really thin there. So this is perfect. And just dab that there. You're going to just go in with any color again, so a nice dark green perhaps. And this time you're just going to add a bit of detail. Some trunks. Let's vary the colors that we're using. Depending on how damp your fabric still is, you will still get a little bit of bleed, which is fine. It's all part of the effect. It's part of the kind of the misty effect. So there we have our trunks, and we're going to now want to add some branches. So again, using this nice flat brush, I'm going to start at the base of the trunks, and I'm just using the edge of the brush to dab on the paint, and as I get to the top, the little strokes become shorter. And again, we're going to just vary the colors a wee bit. So this next one here, So it's one of these techniques that's incredibly easy to get a good result from not really trying too hard and not really being too worried about colors running or things looking a bit blotchy and a bit imperfect, because that's exactly the kind of look that we're going for. I've since thought about all sorts of different ways that you could do this. You could have the foreground could be a loch, and you could have some reflections going on. You just mirror the trees roughly in the water reflections. You could really just experiment and have a bit of fun with it. So a few more branches. We've got there's a big trunk there that doesn't have any branches at all, so we'll just add some onto this one here as well. There we are. I think that's looking quite good. So if I hold it up so you can see. So it's very imperfect, very fast. I probably wouldn't normally go at this kind of speed, but when you're working with watercolors, I remember watching my dad, and you can't really take your time with watercolor because it dries quickly, and it's just the nature of it, isn't it? Now, if I show you the original, there's no color being added to the sky. This is just the plain fabric, but if you wanted to, you could add some blue or some gray for the sky. And you can also add, you can see on this one, if I bring it up to the camera, that I've added 2 or 3 tiny birds. But what I will say is, with the addition of the birds, you use a tiny, tiny brush and wait until your fabric is completely dry. So we're working on damp fabric at the moment, but to add the birds, wait till it's totally dry. Otherwise, you'll just get some sort of grey blobs in the sky because the colour will run. So we had stage 1 was applying the background. Stage 2, after you've let it dry, almost dry, and then you can spray it if it's not damp enough, was to add the detail of the trees. And then stage 3, another Blue Peter moment, is to add some detail with some needle felting and some embroidery. So I'm going to show you what we need for needle felting. And if you have done needle felting, you've probably got these bits and pieces. You will need something to work on. So this is a thick wool mat. We sell these online, and it's brilliant for doing flat needle felting because it's nice and big. You can't really needle felt onto anything like a towel because the felting needle will catch the fibres underneath. So something fit for purpose. If you don't have a proper mat for felting on, you could always use a kitchen sponge, like a scouring sponge, but the sponge side of it rather than the scouring side. So that would work as well. It's not very big. So having a mat like this is really great. You will also need felting needles. You don't need this number of felting needles, obviously. You're only going to be adding some tree trunks, so you only really need 1 felting needle. And I'm going to pick this one with the green top on it. It's just a kind of medium size needle, some felting wool. And this is, the colour of this is bare, but any shade of brown, this is for the trunks of the trees, so any shade of brown is good. And I've got far too much here. You'll be amazed at how little you actually need. So with those supplies and another one that I prepared earlier, it's only got a few branches on it, a few trees. I'm going to show you what we do. So we just need a very small amount of wool. Now, the wool is carded and it comes on a sliver, which is what this is. This piece of wool is called a sliver, which means that the fibres are running along the length of the piece of wool. So what we want to do is just to pull from the end like that. Never cut felting wool. Always pull it so that you're not actually chopping into the fibres and getting a blunt end. You want the nice wispy ends. And again, we've got far too much, so we just pull away and kind of separate out the fibres. I think that's still a wee bit. Now I'm going to needle felt this tree down the middle. So when I said you hardly need any, literally, it's just a few fibres, a few strands. And we're going to just put a trunk onto this tree down here, and I want it to be nice and thin at the top and a bit thicker down at the bottom. So I'm going to hold the wool and give it a twist in my fingers and just lay it down where the trunk is going to go. And then I'm using my felting needle and I'm just going to poke it into place, and I'm holding it as I do it all the way down to the bottom. And the great thing about needle felting is that you don't need to felt onto other wool, so that you know that you can needle felt onto fabric. As long as it's got fibres, it will catch. So just literally poking straight up and down. The felting needle, if you're not familiar with needle felting, the felting needle has barbs on the end. The tip is very sharp, so do be careful, but it has barbs on the end here which catch the fibres as you push the needle in and out of the wool or the fabric. So when you're needle felting, always needle felt up and down on the same plane. Don't twist or bend your needle. If you're somebody who does a lot of sewing, you'll be used to this kind of scooping action. Don't do that with a felting needle because you'll end up breaking the tip. Just go straight in, up and down. And then we've got a little bit too much on the end here. So I'm just going to gently tease that away and poke in the little bits of extra there. So there's one trunk that I have felted over the top of the design in the background. I'm just going to make sure, see, when you're felting, it's going to go right through and it's kind of going to stick a little bit to the mat behind. So just make sure that you lift that off occasionally when you're needle felting. I'd also like to add another trunk in the foreground, so you don't need to follow the design that you've created. We can add another trunk in between the trees. So we'll just put a shorter one here. And again, just pushing it all into place. Sometimes with felting wool, you'll see you'll get a little bit of a fibre. It is all washed and processed carded, as I say, but sometimes there's a little bit of grass, a little bit of vegetation in there. And you can just pick that out with your needle. So 2 tree trunks. Let's gently peel that off. That's what they look like up close. And clearly, if I was completing this as a whole project, I would have, several tree trunks. I would have all of these. You can, if you want to, mark out where you want the tree trunks to go. I had an idea, it was a very bad idea again, that I could use a heat erasable pen, and then I remembered, no, we don't want to be applying any heat to this. So Heat erasable pen, again, not something that you would want to do because you don't want to be ironing this or applying any heat to it. You could use a pencil, but if you ended up putting a pencil mark in and then you change your mind, it's easier to pick the wool off if you end up with it in the wrong place than it would be to make a mark with a pen or a pencil. I tend to be a little bit haphazard's not really the word, but a little bit, just do it and it'll be fine. So I live with my mistakes and it's okay. It's fine. But if you're more particular, you might want to mark out where you want the trees to go. So once you've got your trees in place, you're going to add the finishing touches. And once again, if I show you the final finished piece, we're going to add some finishing touches with embroidery thread. So I don't know if you can pick up on the camera there that I've actually used two different colours of embroidery thread. So we use DMC, it doesn't matter what brand of thread you use, DMC, Anchor, any embroidery thread that you've got. But it is really nice to use the two different tones. And I think on this one, I'm just looking at the strands, that I've used one strand of the very light green and two strands possibly of the darker green. So a light and a dark is good. And what I've done for demonstration is I've actually threaded up the needle just with one strand of each colour. So I've got that ready. I've got a knot in the end, and this is again where you just have to let your perfectionism go because you want to add some straight stitches really quite randomly. So actually I'm going to start at the bottom of this one on the left here. And I'm just going to go in with one straight stitch and then another one coming down to meet it. And then I'm going to come out a little bit. Hope you can see this okay. Come out a little bit. And then up here, so the stitches are going to end up crisscrossing over the top of each other. Some of them are going to be short and will kind of meet the longer stitches halfway perhaps. Some of them are going to be longer and they'll come out from the side and they'll go right into the trunk. They're going to cross over each other. So if I do a shorter stitch up here and bring it right down to the trunk, it's going to cross over the one underneath. And you're just going to continue working up the trunk like this. If you want to, so this is still very slightly damp, which is fine. It's only because I was prepared earlier. And when you do this, if you have a go at this, it will be completely dry. You could put your work into an embroidery hoop, and that will ensure that your stitches are nice and flat, that you're not pulling on the fabric. So as you go up the trunk, just make sure that your stitches are getting slightly shorter so that when you get to the top of the trunk, your branches, twigs and branches are nice and short. The more random, the better. They really need to just be a little bit haphazard. And as long as they're all kind of going roughly in the same direction, it's all good. I'm just going to put one in here and bring it up there. And you can see how that is going to work out. I'm just going to make them shorter all the way up to the top. And then I'm going to do kind of roughly the same on the other side. And what you will see will happen is that the embroidery on this side, or rather on this side, is going to cross over this trunk. And that's exactly what you need to happen because that's what a tree, a forest of trees would look like, all the branches crossing over each other. And if I show you on the finished one again, we can see how that's happened. So there's lots of stitches here crossing over each other, and you might want to go all the way up one side and down the other side, and then have a look at it and think, you know, if there's any little gappy bits and you want to add a few more stitches in there, and just keep adding. It's a really fun part of the project. So once you've got your embroidered branches on, then, as I say, and then with a tiny brush, it's got a little tiny one, so something like this size. It's really, really small, and a very dark grey, just little V shapes for the birds there as a kind of finishing touch. I wouldn't recommend, excuse me, I wouldn't recommend you try sort of drawing them on with pen. Don't use a felt tip pen on fabric because it's likely to bleed. And of course, as soon as you apply it and it starts to bleed, it's just really disappointing. Even if the fabric is completely dry, you would find that it would still do that. But paint on dry fabric will not bleed. You'll get a nice, clean, crisp line. And of course, once the fabric is completely dry, if you want to add any more finer detail to any of the branches behind, in the background, or any other detail, you can do that once the fabric's totally dry. And then as for framing it, well, with the block frame, I did start out, I had it measured out, and you will see if you in the book that I begin with the markings marked out on the fabric so that I know exactly how much of the fabric that I need to cover. Yeah, there's a tree on that side as well. And it's just staple gunned onto the back there. It's quite an easy way to do it. And that's it. That's the pine forest project. But while I've got the overhead camera on, what I will do, it's back to front, isn't it? Doesn't really matter because you don't need to read it. I think it's back to front.
No, it's okay, Jo.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
That's so funny. It looks back to front for me. But anyway, I'll just show you some of the other projects in the book. I'll just kind of flick through so that you can see. Sorry about the shadow. The shadow on this, I think it's actually coming from the phone. But we've got here, I'll just go through it. Oh, here's Truly. So it will take you through all of the tools and materials that you need. It will take you through all of the techniques. Basic needle felting technique, embroidery stitches. I am 100% sure you don't need diagrams for these. You will all know your embroidery stitches. How to preserve leaves using glycerin. So quite a few of the projects use preserved leaves. And I've got a little technique for doing that in there, and how to finish and mount the projects. So the actual projects themselves, we've got a bluebell woods with a lot of French knots in the foreground. If you like your French knots, this is a good one for you. And again, the needle felting with the trunks of the trees there, and watercolour in the background. Let me move this phone up a little bit and you can see better. Then we've got the pine forest, which I've just shown you. The front cover, the baby bunny, I think this will be a really popular one. It's very, very cute. Some embroidery on there as well. And then these little projects, these are just 10 centimetre square canvases, and there are templates for these in the back of the book. So there's 3 different leaves, or rather 2 leaves and a pine cone as well, nice for Christmas. And the acorn and the oak leaf. Little hedgehog. It's a nice one to do. And the hedgehog's jacket is actually a piece of stiff teddy bear mohair fabric. So you don't need to worry about making all those individual spikes. It's literally cut out. There's a template in the back of the book, and you can glue it on to your backing fabric. So that's Mr. Hedgehog. And then one of my favourites are the toadstools. So the toadstools are mounted onto these wooden plaques. You can buy these in Hobbycraft. And this again, it's flat felting onto felt fabric, and then they're cut out, so you've got a bit of a kind of 3D effect. And they are much easier than they look, I can tell you. They look kind of three-dimensional, but it's achieved by using different shades of red. So from dark red wool and a touch of white on the top gives you, they look as if the light's shining on them. And it's very, very easy. So highly satisfying. Little mouse in the brambles, and the brambles are made from polymer clay. So if you've ever used Fimo, that's what the brambles are made from, you know, the clay that you bake in the oven. Again, super easy, and it gives it a really nice sort of 3D effect. And Fox in the Snow, again, watercolour and some French knots there. And this one here, again, super easy, the blue eggs in the nest, and we've got some feathers and some leaves and twigs in there as well. And lastly, our red squirrel. I was hoping to see some of these actually when we were on the West Coast, and we were down in Dumfries 2 weeks ago, and I didn't spot any. Usually we do see some, but not this time. So that's the book, and it's, yeah, it'll be out, I think, on November